Hi, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of the Mission Success Women in Multifamily podcast series. I am Laura Calugar, Senior Associate Editor with Multi Housing News. Every month, I'll be talking to inspiring female executives about their ups and downs, their business strategy,
and of course, their passion for real estate.
Today, I've invited Melanie Gersper, Chief Operating Officer with Asia Capital Real Estate, a private equity firm that oversees property management and other operations for roughly 7,000 Class B and C units across the country. Melanie has a lot of experience in the real estate industry, so I'm glad she accepted my invitation. Hi, Melanie.
Hello, how are you?
Fine, glad that you can be with us. First, let's talk a bit about yourself and how you got into real estate. It's not always the friendliest industry women get into, so to say.
Absolutely. I love to tell this story. After graduating from college with a business degree, I spent about the first 13 years of my professional life working in law enforcement and corrections. Specifically, I was a social worker in a medium security state prison, and I also did some work in the probation field as a probation officer with a couple of different roles in various jurisdictions. So all of that career happened in the state of Ohio. Yeah, I grew up in Ohio, so I went to college there and graduated and spent my first career years in Ohio. My husband and I moved to Georgia about 13 years into my professional life, and I was struggling. Honestly, my original plan was to just continue on that path. I really enjoyed that work and felt like I was, giving something back to the universe and wanted to continue that. However, in the South, I found that law enforcement and corrections looks and feels a little differently than it does in the North, and I really struggled to sort of re-enter that sector. So I had another family member who was in multifamily real estate at the time, and she encouraged me to, kind of shadow her around. And, given that I did have a degree in business, and multifamily real estate is quite people-centric, she encouraged me to shadow her and see if I thought it may be something I would be interested in. And
it
I
seems like a good
did.
fit.
And yes, yeah, I really thought I was intrigued by it, I think, at that point. So in 1997, no exaggeration, I literally had to beg a management company to hire me as a leasing agent, because they looked at my resume and saw that I had been working in jails and prisons and wondered how in the world I was going to translate, that professional experience into a career in leasing and sales and multifamily real estate. But fortunately, I found a company, a small family company based in Atlanta, Georgia, that is still in existence, to give me a chance. And I got my first job as a leasing agent at a 240 unit community in 1997, and I've never looked back.
So you've enjoyed the ride.
Absolutely. I have definitely enjoyed it. I can tell you candidly that probably 6 months into my career in multifamily, I knew that I would never do anything else. And here's why. I think, my education was very business and legal oriented. I thought I may want to go to law school someday, but my 10 plus years of professional experience was all more, human capital and social work and behavior management, which I enjoyed. So I found that multifamily really offered me an opportunity to deploy both of those, the acumen around both of those things I've just described quite well. And I dovetailed over into this business quite naturally, I think.
And how have the past 12 months at Asia Capital Real Estate been for you? What was the hardest?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've been doing this since 97. So this is actually my third sort of what I'm calling market, speed bump, if you will. All three have certainly been driven by different variables. So fundamentally, when this came, even though it was quite unexpected, I organically knew what we needed to do to protect the business and our people, meaning all of our constituents, our investors, our staff, and our residents, and our vendor partners. But obviously there was some uniqueness to this. And I would say the most difficult thing was, the way I would describe it is really just managing through the hardships of people. So, our residents, our staff, our team members, many of our constituents experienced hardships. And I think as a business owner, you are sort of trained, I guess, if you will, conditioned to protect the business first. But in this case, we had to commit to and deliberately deploy a human element to our ability to protect the business, if you will. So I'm not suggesting that was difficult for us, because our culture, I think, is sort of lends itself to that anyway. But it really did force me and my team to really contemplate that in a deliberate manner. And I think that learning and teaching each other how to be firm, fair, and consistent under pretty difficult circumstances was probably one of the most challenging things that we had to remain steadfast on.
And I'm positive you learned a lot along the way and in the past 12 months. What would you say were the top lessons that you learned from your team and also your residents?
Yeah, I love this question. And my answer may not be what you're anticipating. My answer, honestly, is I think what I learned and what we learned as an organization and a real estate investment company is that I think two things. That one, fundamentally, people are good and people want to do the right thing, even in the face of adversity. Many of our residents faced economic hardship and other family hardships, either as a direct, result of the virus or, childcare or just a multitude of other things. Fundamentally, our residents and just people in general that we, have been interacting with for the last 12 months, I think we just learned that people are good with good intentions. And I think it was just, for me and for us, a really meaningful reset back to just the goodness of human beings and human kindness and the currency that allows for. And I think the other thing that, fundamentally I would like to think that I knew, but certainly this last 12 months of hardship and navigating, uncharted territory for all of us, is that, at Acre, I am really proud to say that we, in the last 10 years of being in business, we have really put together a team of what I would just describe as true athletes. They showed up every day. They played hard. The rules of the game kept changing and are still changing. But, our team showed up, they put the jersey on, and they worked. And we survived. We survived quite well.
That's great to hear. And how do you keep yourself updated with everything that goes on in the industry? You just mentioned that things keep changing. What's your routine to stay connected to the latest trends in property management?
Yeah, I think it depends on what piece of it, we do obviously subscribe to and get organically a lot of market information, both on the, capital market side, the investment side, the management side, and operations. So some of it is just through publications. Some of the way we keep connected is certainly through our management company, who, is a 55,000 unit plus management operating management platform based in Atlanta and runs real estate all over the country. They have a, wealth of information available to us. And then, a lot of it is just, just our own network and, different publications that we read. And just, in talking, we do a lot of deliberate, consistent outreach to other people in the industry and have network groups that we lean on for that to stay abreast.
And how did you stay connected to your renters, to your residents? How did you show them that you understand the difficult situations some of them were in?
At a high level, the way we remained connected to our residents is, frankly, we remained available. We did close our offices for the period of time that, I think everyone was just trying to get grounded and get clarity and visibility into what we were facing. But that was a very short period of time for us. We reopened our offices as soon as we felt it was safe to do so. And of course, we did it with a lot of protocol and a lot of new rules, right? But we did get the offices open. We never closed our offices. We never stopped staffing our offices properly. So I think fundamentally, I would just say we remained available. We did not close offices and shut down and turn away. Rather, we leaned into this. And I think, the other obvious ways are we definitely increased our online communication capabilities via text messaging and email blasts and so forth. And then the obvious social media. We all use social media, but, there were a few months, of 2020 where we had to rely much more heavily on social media for communication and just engagement, if nothing else, with our residents.
I know you oversee on-site property management and other operations for Class B and C apartments, and Class C communities have been facing the following challenge. So they've remained well occupied with consistent and maybe even growing renter demand. But residents that typically occupy Class C units work in some of the industries that were hit hardest by the pandemic, such as retail or hospitality. What can you tell us about your strategy to keep rent collections high for Class C assets?
Yes, that's a great question. This was one of our biggest focuses, obviously, like everyone else. And I would say to you that as far as renter demand, we literally never skipped a beat on what I call our front door. It was almost unreal. People continued to navigate around their housing needs and seek, housing opportunities that were, accommodated their particular circumstance, even during the pandemic. So our leasing and sales effort really never hit a blip, and still hasn't. I think on the back end, as far as, trying to maintain collections, I would say first and foremost, and just fundamentally, the approach that we took, I just said to myself, we have to do what is reasonable while protecting our business to try to keep residents in their homes. One, it was the right thing to do during a global pandemic.
Definitely.
Two, right? So secondly, we really do have a commitment to providing affordable workforce housing for the mainstream renter. And so I felt that, our reaction as an investment company to these circumstances could be nothing other than we needed to roll up our sleeves, ferret out resources, get creative, and be willing as an owner to compromise and partner in the hardship, if that makes sense. So we put together, like a lot of other people did brilliantly, many different programs and, opportunities for renters to stay in their units, and navigate what we hoped, and for the most part, what turned out to be a temporary interruption in income. So, and look, there's a fine line between holding people accountable and being the big bad landlord and just letting, residents run amok, if you will. So I think, again, we put together programs that were firm, fair, and consistent. We participated in the hardship, if you will, by forgiving rent, allowing people who communicated to us that they simply couldn't afford to stay in their apartment and had made other housing arrangements to turn keys in and get out of their lease with no termination fees and no pursuit of the back rent that they owed us and so forth. So we put together some pretty profound programs to assist.
And I know that you launched a flexible rent program in September through TIL to combat evictions. How is that working?
It's working phenomenally. We did roll out FlexPay. It was actually prior to September. We were talking about it. We had been working on this program, sort of partnering with TIL on creating the program for several months early in 2020. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, we formally rolled it out probably in May across the portfolio. So to date, I can just tell you high level, they've collected over $2 million in rent for us during this pandemic. I think we probably have a little over 20% of our current renter base enrolled in the program with a 95% success rate, meaning that if someone passes a screening to get into the program and they make their first rent payment through the program, there's a 95% success rate with those residents. The other program that we created, though, as these circumstances continued to evolve last year, is what TIL calls a rebound program, where we had those residents who just needed help breaking their rent payments up. But that was for residents who were current on rent. By September-ish, we saw a need for an additional program that would accommodate renters who had gotten behind on rent, but now had the capability to get caught back up and be back in good standing on their ledgers. So we created Rebound, which is a whole nother, or TIL created Rebound with us, which is a whole nother program that allowed residents, again, to be screened and qualified and pay their current rent current and then make payments toward their back rent. And that program is also going very well. And again, kept all of these residents in their apartment homes.
Of course, and that was the most important thing, right?
Absolutely.
Class B assets instead continue to attract renters that are relatively financially stable. So collections maybe have been less of an issue here than in lower class assets. What can you tell us about the company's planned investments in Class B properties for this year? Is this a way to secure a stable cash flow?
Yeah, I think a lot of the investor base in multifamily is shifting gears away from the really tough Class C value add opportunities. Speaking for Acre, I would say that our investment strategy in 2021 is shifting toward a different class of physical asset and a slightly different income demographic. Interestingly, though, that shift in investment strategy is honestly less driven by the pandemic and what we experienced last year, and more driven by just a shift in capital markets and the return profile of investments.
Mhm.
So, yeah, the return profile on those tougher Class C value add assets that we've been doing is consistent with a less risky type of investment in even a Class A or B asset. So, if that makes sense, our shift in strategy is not really driven by demographic; it's more driven by the return profile of our investments.
And no matter what asset class we're talking about, I know that property managers have sought different ways to add value for residents and replace community and social events, because that's an important thing that residents appreciate. But it's hard to throw a party or organize events nowadays due to social distancing requirements. How can property managers build and engage with their communities in this new environment we're all living in?
Yeah, it's another great question. I think we've all been forced to get creative. And I would tell you that, very frankly speaking, when this hit, we immediately shifted our mentality from doing what you and I would consider, social events and kind of fun things, pool parties and, breakfast on the go and things like that. We shifted to what I'm just going to refer to, practical needs, solutions for people's practical needs. So
Mhm.
we did school supply drives, even though kids were being, not in school, they still had needs at home. We shifted to, doing, like I said, community drives for school supplies that we provided to our residents. We did, one of our vendors built some little food pantries that are like little, huts that we put on the properties, and
So nice.
residents and surrounding communities, still today deposit food bank type things into those pantries that our residents enjoy. We tried to help with offering some common area social distance, qualified space for tutoring. We have a lot of big clubhouses with a lot of space that we basically took larger spaces and temporarily or maybe permanently split it into smaller spaces. And then one of the things that I think is a bit unique about the Acre investment strategy is we do, green space, if you will. And so on our community farms, we never stopped farming those.
And another thing that's been going on since the onset of the pandemic is the fact that many Americans have been, of course, sheltering in place and quarantining, and they've been receiving more packages than before. How have you been handling package deliveries at your communities?
Some of our communities have package lockers, so that process never changed. However, our communities that don't have the neutral package locker stations, it's interesting. We had a tough decision to make. The willingness and ability of leasing offices and apartment community staff to accept packages on behalf of apartment dwellers has been just an ongoing, evolving, amenity, if you will, because it certainly is an amenity to residents. We had a tough decision to make, though, when the pandemic hit, because, again, in order to protect our staff, our residents, the UPS and FedEx drivers, we stopped accepting packages in our leasing offices, and obviously communicated communicated appropriately to our residents and offered other suggestions and so forth for how they could receive packages safely. And to be honest, we have not changed that policy, and we are not really getting any meaningful negative feedback from our residents. I think people just adjusted to it and have figured out alternative ways to get their packages. So we are still no longer accepting packages in our leasing offices.
You're just putting safety first.
Absolutely.
Is there anything different you do now to market your properties than you did a year ago?
Sure. I think, I probably speak for a lot of the multifamily industry. Our internet presence, while it is miles, ahead of where it was 15 years ago, it's probably still not, up to par with other industries, I would say. So we have definitely focused more on internet presence, which is frankly something our industry probably should have done years ago. But I would say that's the main thing. We've just beefed up and I would say enhanced our internet presence in all ways, maybe with some multiple site presence, as well as just, again, enhancing our current internet platform.
And besides from that, what does the property manager need to do or know in order to stay ahead of the management game in 2021?
Yeah, I think it's a couple things. I think first, our business fundamentally is a sales business. So, I have always said, no matter what's happening with market conditions that are often uncontrollable, and has certainly been the case with the circumstances we've been discussing, I think property manager that's going to be successful in 2021 will continue to focus on leasing and sales. I always have said, if we aren't leasing apartments and collecting rent and being nice to our customers, frankly, nothing else that we're doing matters, because it will all be secondary to the fundamentals of our business, which are leasing, collecting, and customer service. So right. I think that I'm always going to say, right, no matter what's going on in the market, those are the things that we have to continue to focus on. I think in addition to that, I think there's a couple other things, though, I might mention. One is just, what I'm going to call managing that back door. And that means, certainly trying to keep our paying residents happy and content and, wanting to maintain residents in our communities and renew their leases this year, but also managing the part of the back door that's tougher, where we've got residents that are that have a fail rate with regard to paying their rent on time or at all. So I think a successful manager in 2021 is going to be forward-looking and proactive and firm, fair, and consistent with those residents. And then I think the last thing is, and this one's a little more qualitative, I think it's just not, now that we've had, whether we wanted it or not, kind of a hard reset back to what I just call human hardship and learning the power of connecting with each other, and the currency that allows in business is so powerful, especially in a business that involves housing. I mean, housing is fundamentally is the biggest fundamental need that any of us have. So I think a successful property manager going forward is not going to leave that lesson behind, right? That was a hard lesson last. Oh, it's just a hard reset to, wow, human kindness and hardship and connecting with people and communicating and, partnering with people on, in a relationship that goes beyond the transactional nature of that relationship has been so powerful for us this year that I hope none of us ever lose that. I think successful managers going forward will recall and maintain that.
Let's hope so. Melanie, thank you very much for your insights. It was a great discussion.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Until our next monthly chat, make sure you follow MHN's The Lease Up podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.